Hey everybody, welcome to the Free Bin. It's Harrison. This is the Toledo, Oregon Public Library's podcast, and tonight, I'm recording this during the evening. I'm working a little late, hanging out with our evening D&D group. They meet every Saturday, and taking advantage of some quiet time here in the library to celebrate Poetry Month. It is National Poetry Month. And we've got a lot going on in the month of April. Check out our newsletter. Check out our website. We have a community garden day happening on April 26th from 10 to 3. You are definitely not going to want to miss that. And I've got a poem to read today. This is going to be a long one. I figured, hey, you kind of assume poems are going to be short. And this one is actually going to be one of the longer pieces I have read, but trust me, it is not boring. It's quite a ride. Clark Ashton Smith wrote a lot of kind of dark, surreal stuff. I believe we've mentioned him on the podcast before. He was a contemporary of folks like H.P. Lovecraft, and this is just it's a dark, weird, surreal, good theater of the mind stuff. This poem is called The Hashish Eater, or The Apocalypse of Evil, from 1920 by Clark Ashton Smith. You do not have to eat any hashish to enjoy this poem, I'll have you know. You can just turn out the lights, close your eyes, and listen along while I read. And we'll see how long this takes me. All right, here we go. Bow down. I am the Emperor of Dreams. I crown me with the million-colored sun of secret worlds incredible, and take their trailing skies for vestment when I soar, throned on the mounting zenith, and illume the spaceward flown horizons infinite, like rampant monsters roaring for their glut. The fiery crested oceans rise and rise by jealous moons maleficently urged to follow me forever, mountains horned with peaks of sharpest adamant, and mawed with sulfur-lit volcanoes, lava-langed usurp the skies with thunder, but in vain, and continents of serpent-shapen trees, with slimy trunks that lengthen league by league, pursue my flight through ages, spurned to fire by that supreme ascendance. Sorcerers and evil kings, predominantly armed with scrolls of fulvous dragon skin, whereon are worm-like runes of ever-twisting flame, would stay me, and the sirens of the stars, with foam-like songs from silver fragrance wrought, would lure me to their crystal reefs, and moons where viper-eyed senescent devils dwell, with antic gnomes abominably wise, heave up their icy horns across my way, but naught deters me from the goal ordained by suns and eons and immortal wars, and sung by moons and motes, the goal whose name is all the secret of forgotten glyphs, by sinful gods and torrid rubies writ for ending of a brazen book, the goal whereat my soaring ecstasy may stand, in amplest heavens multiplied to hold my hordes of thunder-vested avatars, and Promethean armies of my thought, that brandish clasped levens. There I call my memories, intolerably clad in light the peaks of paradise may wear, and lead the Armageddon of my dreams, whose instant shout of triumph has become immensity's own music, for their feet are founded on innumerable worlds, remote in alien epochs, and their arms upraised are columns potent to exalt with ease ineffable the countless thrones of all the gods that are or gods to be, and bear the seats of Asmodee and Set above the seventh paradise. Supreme. In culminant omniscience, manifold and served by senses multitudinous, far posted on the shifting walls of time, with eyes that roam the star-unwinnowed fields of utter night and chaos, I convoke the babble of their visions, and attend at once their myriad witness. I behold an Ombos where the fallen titans dwell, with mountain-builded walls, and gulfs for moat, that secret cleft that cunning dwarves have dug, beneath an Alp-like buttress, and I list too late the clam of adamantine gongs, dinned by their drowsy guardians, whose feet have fell the wasp-like sting of little knives, imbrued with slobber of the basilisk, or the pale juice of wounded upas. In some red Antarian garden world I see the sacred flower with lips of purple flesh and silver-lashed vermilion-lidded eyes of torpid azure, whom his furtive priests at moonless eve in terror seek to slay, with bubbling grails of sacrificial blood that tide a hueless poison. And I read upon the tongue of a forgotten sphinx the annulling word a spiteful demon wrote in gall of slain chimeras, and I know what pinnacles the lunar wizards use, that once allured the gulf-returning rock with 10 great wings of furled storm to pause midmost an alabaster mountain there with boulder-weighted webs of dragon's gut, uplift by cranes, a captive giant built. They wound the monstrous moonquake-throbbing bird and plucked from off his saber-taloned feet Uranian sapphires fast in frozen blood, and amethysts from Mars. I lean to read with slant-lipped mages in an evil star that monstrous archives of a war that ran through wasted eons, and the prophecy of wars renewed, which shall commemorate some enmity of wyvern-headed kings even to the brink of time. I know the blooms of bluish fungus freaked with mercury that bloat within the creators of the moon, and in one still Selenic and fetter, and I know what clammy blossoms blanched and cavern grown are proffered to their gods in Uranus, by mole-eyed peoples and the livid seed of some black fruit a king in Saturn ate, which cast upon his tinkling palace floor took root between the burnished flags, and now hath mounted and become a hellish tree whose lithe and hairy branches, lined with mouths, net like 100 ropes his lurching throne, and strain its starting pillars. I behold the slowly thronging corals that usurp some harbor of a million-masted sea, and sun them on the league-long wharves of gold, bulks of enormous crimson, kraken-limbed and kraken-headed, lifting up as crowns the octaremes of perished emperors, and galleys fraught with royal gems that sailed from a sea-fled haven. Swifter and stranger grow the visions. Now a mighty city looms, hewn from a hill of purest cinnabar to domes and turrets like a sunrise thronged, with tier on tier of captive moons half drowned in shifting iridescence, but whose hands were sculptors of its doors and columns, wrought to semblance of prodigious blooms of old. No eremite hath lingered there to say, and no man comes to learn, for long ago a prophet came, warning its timid king against the plague of lichens that had crept across subverted empires and the sand of waste that Cyclopean mountains ward, which slow and ineluctable would come to take his fiery bastions and his fanes, and quench his domes with greenish tetter. Now I see a host of naked gents armed with horns of behemoth and unicorn who wander, blinded by the clinging spells of hostile wizardry, and stagger on to forests where the very leaves have eyes, and ebonies like wrathful dragons roar, to teaks a chuckle in the loathly gloom, where coiled lianas lean with serried fangs from writhing palms with swollen bowls that moan, where leeches of a scarlet moss have sucked the eyes of some dead monster and have crawled to bask upon his azure-spotted spine, where hydra-throated blossoms hiss and sing, or yawn with mouths that drip a sluggish dew, whose touch is death and slow corrosion. Then I watch a war of pygmies met by night, with pitter of their drums of parrots hide on plains with no horizon, where a god might lose his way for centuries, and there, in wreathed light and fulgurs all convolved, a rout of green enormous moons ascend with rays that like a shivering venom run on inch-long swords of lizard fang. Surveyed from this my throne, as from a crystal sun, the pageantries of worlds and cycles pass. Forgotten splendors dream by dream unfold like tapestry and vanish. Violet suns, or suns of changeful iridescence, bring their rays about me like the colored lights. Imploring priests might lift to glorify the face of some averted god. The songs of mystic poets in a purple world ascend to me in music that is made from unconceived perfumes and the pulse of love ineffable. The lute players whose lutes are strung with gold of the utmost moon call forth delicious languors never known, save to their golden kings. The sorcerers of hooded stars inscrutable to God surrender me their demon-rested scrolls inscribed with lore of monstrous alchemies and awful transformations. If I will, I am at once the vision and the seer, and mingle with my ever-streaming pomps and still abide their suzerain. I am the neophyte who serves a nameless god within whose fane, the fanes of Hecatompolis, where arcs the Titan worshippers might bear or flags to pave the threshold, or I am the God himself who calls the fleeing clouds into the nave where suns might congregate and veils the darkling mountain of his face with fold on solemn fold, for whom the priests amass their monthly hecatomb of gems, opals that are a camel-cumbering load, and monstrous alabrandines won from war, with realms of hostile serpents, which arise combustible in vapors many-hued and mere-excelling perfumes. It is I, the king, who holds with scepter-dropping hand the helm of some great barge of orichalcum, sailing upon an amethystine sea to isles of timeless summer, for the snows of Hyperborean winter and their winds sleep in this jewel-builded capital, nor any charm of flame-wrought wizardry, nor conjured suns may rout them, so he fees with captain kings to urge his serried oars, hopeful of dales where amaranthine dawn hath never left the faintly sighing lote, and lisping moly firm of heart I fare, empanoplied with azure diamond as hero of a quest, Achernar lights, to deserts filled with ever-wandering flames that feed upon the sullen marl and soar to wrap the slopes of mountains, and to leap with tongues intolerably lengthening that lick the blenched heavens. But there lives, secure as in a garden walled from wind, a lonely flower by a placid well, midmost the flaring tumult of the flames, that roar as roars a storm-possessed sea, implacable forever. And within that simple grail the blossom lifts, there lies one drop of an incomparable dew which heals the parched weariness of kings and cures the wound of wisdom. I am page to an emperor who reigns 10,000 years, and through his labyrinthine palace rooms, through courts and colonnades and balconies, wherein immensity itself is mazed, I seek the golden gorget he hath lost, on which in sapphires fine as orris seed are writ the names of his conniving stars and friendly planets. Roaming thus, I hear like demon tears incessant through dark ages the drip of sullen clepsydra, and once in every lustrum hear the brazen clocks innumerably clang with such a sound as brazen hammers make by devils dinned on tombs of all the dead. And nevermore I find the gorget, but at length I find a sealed room whose nameless prisoner moans with a nameless torture, and would turn to hell's red rack as to a lilied couch from that whereon they stretched him. And I find prostrate upon a lotus-painted floor the loveliest of all beloved slaves my emperor hath, and from her pulseless side a serpent rises wider than the root of some benefic bloom, in darkness grown, and gazes up with green-lit eyes that seem like drops of cold, congealing poison. Hark! What word was whispered in a tongue unknown in crypts of some impenetrable world? Whose is the dark dethroning secrecy I cannot share, though I am king of suns, and king therewith of strong eternity, whose gnomons with their swords of shadow guard my gates and slay the intruder? Silence loads the wind of ether, and the worlds are still, to hear the word that flees mine audience. In simultaneous ruin all my dreams fall like a rack of fuming vapors raised to semblance by a necromant, and leave spirit and sense unthinkably alone above a universe of shrouded stars and suns that wander cowled with sullen gloom like witches to a Sabbath. Fear is born in crypts below the nadir, and hath crawled, reaching the floor of space, and waits for wings to lift it upward like a hellish worm, fain for the flesh of cherubim, red orbs and eyes that gleam remotely as the stars, but are not eyes of suns or galaxies, gather and throng to the base of darkness. Flame behind some black, abysmal curtain burns, implacable and fanned to whitest wrath by raised wings that flail the whiffled gloom and make a brief and broken wind that moans as one who rides a throbbing rack. There is a thing that crouches worlds and years remote, whose horns a demon sharpens, rasping forth a note to shatter the dungeon keeps of time or rack the sphere of crystal. All is dark for ages, and my toiling heart suspends its clamor as within the clutch of death, tightening with tense hermetic rigors. Then in one enormous million brilliant flashing flame, the stars unveil, the suns remove their cowls and beam to their responding planets. Time is mine once more, and armies of its dreams rally to that insuperable throne, firmed on the zenith. Once again I seek the meads of shining moly I had found in some anterior vision by a stream. No cloud hath ever tarnished where the sun, a gold Narcissus, loiters evermore above his golden image. But I find a corpse the ebbing water will not keep, with eyes like sapphires that have lain in hell and felt the hissing coals, and all the flowers about me turn to hooded serpents swayed by flutes of devils in lascivious dance. Meet for the nod of Satan when he reigns above the raging Sabbath and is wooed by sarabands of witches. But I turn to mountains guarding with their horns of snow the source of that befouled rill, and seek a pinnacle where none but eagles climb, and they with failing pennons. But in vain I flee, for on that pylon of the sky some curse hath turned the unprinted snow to flame. Red fires that curl and cluster to my tread, trying the summit's narrow cirque. And now I see a silver python far beneath, vast as a river that a fiend hath witched and forced to flow, reverted in its course to mountains whence it issued. Rapidly it winds from slope to crumbling slope, and fills ravines and chasmal gorges, till the crags totter with coil on coil incumbent. Soon it hath entwined the pinnacle I keep, and gapes with a fanged unfathomable maw, wherein great Typhon and Enceladus were orts of daily glut. But I am gone, for at my call a hippogriff hath come, and firm between his shoulder-beating wings I mourn the sheer cerulean walls of noon, and see the earth a spurned pebble fall, lost in the fields of nether stars, and seek a planet where the outwearied wings of time might pause and furl for respite, where the plumes of death be stayed, and loiter in reprieve above some deathless lily, for therein beauty hath found an avatar of flowers, blossoms that clothe it as a colored flame, from peak to peak, from pole to sullen pole, and turn the skies to perfume. There I find a lonely castle, calm and unbeset, save by the purple spears of amaranth and leafing iris tender-sorted. Walls of flushed marble, wonderful with rose, and domes like golden pebbles and minarets that take the clouds as coronal. These are mine, for voiceless looms the peaceful barbican, and the heavy-teethed portcullis hangs aloft to grin a welcome. So I leave a while, my hippogriff to crop the magic meads, and pass into a court the lilies hold, and tread them to a fragrance that pursues, to win the portico whose columns carved of lazuli and amber mock the palms of bright Idenic forests capitaled with fronds of stone fretted to airy lace, and folding droops that seem as tawny clusters of breasts of unknown houris, and convolved with vines of shut and shadowy leaved flowers like the dropped lids of women that endure some loin-dissolving ecstasy. Through the doors inlaid with lilies twined luxuriously I enter, dazed and blinded with the sun, and hear in gloom that changing colors cloud. A chuckle sharp as crepitating ice, unheaved and cloven by shoulders of the damned who strive in Antenora. When my eyes undazzle and the cloud of color fades, I find me in a monster-guarded room, where marble apes with wings of griffins crowd on walls, an evil sculptor wrought, and beasts, wherein the sloth and vampire bat unite, pendulous by their toes of tarnished bronze, usurp the shadowy interval of lamps that hang from ebon arches. Like a ripple, borne by the wind from pool to sluggish pool in fields where wide Cocytus flows his bound, a crackling smile around that circle runs, and all the stone-wrought gibbons stare at me with eyes that turn to glowing coals. A fear that found no name in Babel flings me on, breathless and faint with horror, to a hall within whose weary self-reverting round the languid curtains heavier than palls innumerably depict a weary king, who fain would cool his jewel-crusted hands in lakes of emerald evening, or the field of dreamless poppies pure with rain. I flee onward, and all the shadowy curtains shake with tremors of a silken sighing mirth, and whispers of the innumerable king breathing a tale of ancient pestilence whose very words are vile contagion. Then I reach a room where caryatids carved in the form of voluptuous Titan women surround a throne, flowering ebony where creeps a fine of crystal. On the throne there lolls a wan, enormous worm whose bulk, tumid with all the rottenness of kings, overflows its arms with fold on creased fold, obscenely bloating. Open-mouthed he leans, and from his fulvous throat a score of tongues, depending like to wreaths of torpid vipers, drivel with phosphorescent slime that runs down all his length of soft and monstrous folds, and creeping among the flowers of ebony lends them the life of tiny serpents. Now, ere the horror ope those red and lashless slits of eyes that draw the gnat and midge, I turn and follow down a rusty hall whose gloom, lined by the statues with their mighty limbs, ends in golden-roofed balcony, sphering the flowered horizon. Ere my heart hath hushed the panic tumult of its pulses, I listen from beyond the horizon's rim, a mutter faint, as when the far simoom, mounting from unknown deserts, opens forth wide as the waste, those wings of torrid night that shake the doom of cities from their folds, and musters in its van 1,000 winds, that with disrooted palms for besoms rise, and sweep the sands to fury, as the storm approaching mounts, and loudens to the ears of them that toil in fields of sesame. So grows the mutter, and a shadow creeps above the gold horizon like a dawn of darkness climbing zenithward. They come, the Sabbath of retribution, drawn from all dread spheres that knew my trespassing, and led by vengeful fiends and dire elasters that owned my sway aforetime. Cockatrice, Chimera, Marticora's behemoth, Geryon and Sphinx and Hydra on my ken arise as might some Afrit-builded city, consummate in the lifting of a lash with thunderous domes and sounding obelisks, and towers of night and fire alternate. Wings of white hot stone along the hissing wind bear up the huge and furnace-hearted beasts of hells beyond Rutilicus, and things whose lightless length would meet the gyre of moons, born from the caverns of a dying sun. Uncoil to the very zenith, half disclosed from gulfs below the horizon, octopi like blazing moons with countless arms of fire climb from the seas of ever-surging flame that roll and roar through planets unconsumed, beating on coasts of unknown metals. Beasts that range the mighty worlds of Alioth rise, afforesting the heavens with multitudinous horns, amid whose maze the winds are lost, and borne on cliff-like brows of plunging scolopendras the shell-wrought towers of ocean witches loom, and griffin-mounted gods and demons throned on sable dragons, and the cocadrills that bear the spleenful pygmies on their backs, and blue-faced wizards from the worlds of safe, on whom titanic scorpions fawn, and armies that move with fronts reverted from the foe, and strike athwart their shoulders at the shapes the shields reflect in crystal, and idola fashioned within unfathomable caves by hands of eyeless people, and the blind worm-shapen monsters of a sunless world, with krakens from the ultimate abyss, and demogorgons of the outer dark, arising, shout with dire multitudinous clamors, and threatening me with dooms ineffable. In words whereat the heavens leap to flame, advance upon the enchanted palace, falling for league on league before their shadows light and eat like fire the Arnaranthine meads, leaving an ashen desert. In the palace I hear the apes of marble shriek and howl, and all the women shapen columns moan, babbling with terror. In my tenfold fear, a monstrous dread unnamed in any hall, I rise and flee with the fleeing wind for wings, and in a trice the wizard palace reefs, and spring to a single tower of flame, goes out and leaves nor shard nor ember. Flown beyond the world upon that fleeing wind, I reach the gulf's irrespirable verge, where fads the strongest storm for breath and fall, supportless through the nadir plunged gloom, beyond the scope and vision of the sun to other skies and systems. In a world deep-wooded with the multicolored fungi that soar to semblance of fantastic palms. I fall as falls the meteor stone and break a score of trunks to atom powder. Unharmed I rise, and through the illimitable woods among the trees of flimsy opal roam and see their tops that clamber hour by hour to touch the sons of Iris, things unseen whose charnel breath informs the tideless air. With spreading pools of fetor follow me elusive past the ever-changing palms, and pittering moths with wide and ashen wings flit on before, and insects ember-hued descending hurtle through the gorgeous gloom and quench themselves in crumbling thickets. Heard far off the gong-like roar of beasts unknown resounds at measured intervals of time, shaking the riper trees to dust that falls in clouds of acrid perfume, stifling me beneath an irised pall. Now the palmettos grow far apart and lessen momently to shrubs a dwarf might topple. Over them I see an empty desert all ablaze with amethysts and rubies and the dust of garnets or carnelians. On I roam, treading the gorgeous grit that dazzles me with leaping waves of endless rudolence, whereby the air is turned to a crimson gloom, through which I wander blind as any kobold, till underfoot the grinding sands give place to stone or metal with a massive ring more welcome to mine ears than golden bells or tinkle of silver fountains. When the gloom of crimson lifts, I stand upon the edge of a broad black plain of adamant that reaches level as windless water to the verge of all the world, and through the sable plain 100 streams of shattered marble run, and streams of broken steel and streams of bronze, like to the ruin of all the wars of time, to plunge with clangor of timeless cataracts adown the gulfs eternal. So I follow, between a river of steel and a river of bronze, with ripples loud and tuneless as the clash of a million lutes, and come to the precipice from which they fall and make the mighty sound of a million swords that meet a million shields, or din of spears and armor in the wars of half the worlds and eons. Far beneath they fall through gulfs and cycles of the void and vanish like a stream of broken stars into the nether darkness, nor the gods of any sun nor demons of the gulf will dare to know what everlasting sea is fed thereby and mounts forevermore in one unebbing tide. What nimbus cloud or night of sudden and supreme eclipse is on the sun's opal? At my side the rivers run with a wan and ghostly gleam. Through darkness falling as the night that falls from spheres extinguished, turning I behold betwixt the sable desert and the suns the poised wings of all the dragon rout, far flown in black occlusion thousandfold through stars and deeps and devastated worlds upon my trail of terror, griffins, rocks, and sluggish dark chimeras heavy-winged after the raven of dispeopled lands, and harpies and the vulture birds of hell, hot from abominable feasts and fain to cool their beaks and talons in my blood. All have gathered in the wingless rear, with rank on rank of foul colossal worms, makes horrent now the horizon. From the wan I hear the shriek of wyvers, loud and shrill as tempests in a broken fane, and roar of sphinxes, like relentless toll of bells from towers infernal. Cloud on hellish cloud they arch the zenith, and a dreadful wind falls from them like the wind before the storm, and in the wind my riven garment streams, and flutters in the face of all the void, even as flows a flapping spirit, lost on the pit's undying tempest. Louder grows the thunder of the streams of stone and bronze, redoubled with the roar of torrent wings, inseparable mingled. Scarce I keep my footing in the gulfward winds of fear, and mighty thunders beating to the void and sea like waves incessant, and would flee with them and prove the nadir-founded night where fall the streams of ruin. But when I reach the verge, and seek through sun-defeating gloom to measure with my gaze the dread descent, I see a tiny star within the depths, a light that stays me while the wings of gloom convene their thickening thousands. For the star increases, taking to its hueless orb. With all the speed of horror-changed dreams, the light is of a million moons, and floating up through gulfs and glooms eclipsed, it grows and grows, a huge white, eyeless face that fills the void and fills the universe, and bloats against the limits of the world with lips of flame that open. I did it. I read the whole thing. I probably mispronounced a bunch of stuff, and I'm sorry about that. But yeah, I did it. That's probably the longest poem. Well, I know it's the longest poem I've ever read on this show. Yeah. So enjoy your National Poetry Month. Find something out there to read, write something of your own, and I will talk to y'all next week. I'm a little hoarse right now. Talk to y'all next week. Have a good one. Bye. The Free Bin is a production of the Toledo Public Library, which is part of the Lincoln County Library District in beautiful Lincoln County, Oregon. Writing by Harrison Baker, Cindy Balek, and Denise Marsh. Original music and editing by Harrison Baker. That's me. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect those of any organizations they represent. Good night.